Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Joshua friend, Battlefield has 2042 problems, but at launch day patch ain't one. Seems
God.
They're getting out ahead of the conversation, let's say. Lots of mixed reviews, lots of mixed reception to Battlefield 2042. There is an early access period going on if you have Game Pass, if you have EA Play, building up to the full launch itself. Now, we should say ahead of everything else we're about to say that we are sponsored by Battlefield over on the podcast, but that has nothing to do with the video that we're putting together now and everything that we're about to get into going forward. But we're also going to talk about the reality of what's unfolding right now because Josh has been reviewing the game and there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we got sent through the review copy last week, and I've been playing it since then. And obviously, if you go into the Metacritic and the user scores for this game at the moment, it's not a pretty sight. You know, there are definitely loads and loads of issues with this game. I'm personally still really enjoying it, but it's undeniably got problems, and those problems are starting to really get on the nerves of the hardcore fans. And like I said, it's spilling over into these terrible, terrible Metacritic scores. And I think a crux of it is that the game generally just feels like rushed, even though it's been in development for about 3 years. It's released now, and there are glitches. It's not like a Battlefield 4 level set of glitches and bugs, like that was unplayable. This is better than that, but there's still far too many glitches, far too many issues, and a kind of like a lack of content. You know, you go into Battlefield 2042, and while it's fun to play, you'll notice immediately that there's only a small amount of guns. I think there's 22 in All Out War. There are 7 main maps in All Out War, and the kind of whole suite of options at your disposal just feels a little bit lacking. And I think that was always a danger when there wasn't going to be a campaign. Like, a lot of people were worried about this outcome when that was announced. But yeah, seeing the final game, there's just a lot that seems missing, especially when you hold it up to other Battlefield games.
I mean, that's the thing, it's been a while as well. I mean, Battlefield 5 was a solid enough game, but obviously didn't land anywhere near as much as, let's say, Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 1. And I feel like they needed some like big splash to come back. And I feel like in the run-up across this year, it was always like, Call of Duty's not doing that well, no one cares about Vanguard. Halo, we don't know what state that's going to be in. It's going to be Battlefield. It's Battlefield 2042 is going to be this like soaring phoenix of a game. And I've been playing the Game Pass version, the early access thing. You can play up to 10 hours. And I enjoy it, but I'm very much a casual Battlefield fan. But I feel like even things like the menu layouts, even the way that they sort of lay out the hood, there's little things that get in the way that I guess if you start getting that feeling of this doesn't feel right, there are only more things to go in that direction.
Dude, it makes a terrible first impression. Like I said, you know, I've come round to it and I'm enjoying it now, and I'm looking forward to, you know, playing it later on tonight. But that first night I sat down with it, I just thought, oh no, something has gone really, really wrong, because the first impression is not good. Like, you jump into Conquest, which I think a lot of fans will do. Conquest has obviously been the marquee Battlefield mode for a long, long time now. It's one of the first modes that you get on the game, and it immediately feels like a little bit sparse. Like you said, the UI is almost oppressive in how overwhelming it is. Like, it's so illegible, and you can't really read exactly what's going on. So there's like a lot of like issues like that just stack the deck against you. Even trying to get into a match or mess around with your loadouts is weirdly finicky because of just like the way everything is laid out. And you know, stuff like that again just makes for a terrible first impression, and it doesn't endear you to the game when you're just getting overwhelmed by all of this information.
Because doesn't it seem, because the general sentiment that I've seen online from the more negative people is just that it doesn't feel like Battlefield anymore, that they've sort of been, you know, they've introduced different characters that are more adjacent to, I don't know, what started with superhero stuff, hero shooters like Overwatch, but you've kind of got the operators that were in Rainbow Six Siege type stuff. It seems like it's their version of that, and is that the thing that is contributing to the whole feel of it not being like traditional Battlefield?
Definitely. I think for better or worse, and a lot of people definitely view it as worse, every time a new Battlefield comes around, like DICE just sweeps all the pieces off the table and just starts again for whatever reason, even if the pieces, you know, weren't bad to begin with. And that's definitely the case here. Yeah, like the addition of specialists instead of the regular classes, which used to lock, you know, gadgets and weapons behind the medic, for instance, or the engineer and stuff. Now you get all of these different specialists that have like skins attached to them and their own unique abilities, but it means that team play is impacted because, you know, you might be getting a bunch of specialists that have the, the wingsuit, for instance, instance, but then no one prioritizing healing and reviving and stuff like that. So it's definitely a big change in that front. Specialists, I actually, and this is going to be very controversial, I actually don't mind specialists too much.
Me neither.
I probably would have preferred classes, but one thing I do lament, and I just can't fathom why they changed, is the changes to player mobility and, actual gameplay elements. Battlefield 5 was a great feeling game to play. Like, you had a lot of control over your character, you had a lot of agility, you could, vault up things really easily, you could peek around corners, you could go 360 prone and prone on your back and all of that stuff. There was a lot of control you had over your character, and a lot of those features just aren't here, and there's no real reason why, because what they've been replaced with doesn't feel better, it doesn't feel bad,
right.
but if you go into this game having played other Battlefield games, I just think you notice this stuff that isn't there. So I'm really interested for tomorrow on the launch day, if people are picking up this game as their first Battlefield, for instance, and they don't even notice that stuff. But, from someone like me who's been a big fan since Bad Company 1, like, you notice the steps backwards, and it's just really confusing as to why they've made that decision.
See, the thing is, that I think appeals to me. Like, I'm a huge Call of Duty fan, huge Halo fan, barely ever connected with Battlefield. It's just one of those franchises that there's a whole bunch of reasons why I didn't connect with that franchise. But I wonder if they've literally just tried to streamline it, like, in such a direction that, they've almost ended up shedding their identity in the process just by getting rid of the more tactile elements and making it so it is just one big chaotic sandbox of, like, a whole bunch of different vehicles blowing up against each other, a whole bunch of different ways that different squads can interact with each other. It feels like, especially across the trailers, they're encouraging a level of sheer chaos and anarchy that I wouldn't really associate with Battlefield overall, but I feel like they led the entire marketing with it this time. I know that we've talked about this before, like before we've been recording and stuff, and you said that there's always been elements like that in the games themselves. But what do you think? Does it, like, I guess it's that weird nebulous question of, like, does it feel like Battlefield to you? Can you kind of see what they're going for?
I mean, this is the big question, and this is why I think it's gone down so poorly with a lot of fans, because, some people had, including myself to a certain extent, had a very rigid idea of what they wanted for this and had huge expectations of what this could be had they stuck to the old formula. And like I said, they haven't really stuck to the old formula, but that said, there is still a lot of Battlefield in there, and that's why I'm still ultimately having a pretty good time with it. I do think that the 128 player battles can be intense, especially if you're playing Breakthrough. Like, that kind of hectic chaos is definitely there. I can see that people just might not like that, especially with the team play elements dialed down. But for me, I'm still having fun because there's still a Battlefield core in there. It's very different, and it's going to be interesting to see if they do change things like specialists and what have you. But yeah, it's kind of like they've made a step. And it's not necessarily a step in front of them. It's kind of like a step to the side in some ways and backwards in some ways to the front. There are still things I do think are good additions. For instance, being able to swap out your attachments, in the actual matches, and like I said, the scale and the visuals and stuff. But it's just kind of like it's a very inconsistent game, I think, is the best I can sum it up as.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that a lot of the feedback that came out of the initial beta that they did was quite unanimously negative. There was a lot of different animation problems and stuff, and I think DICE got out there and said it was an earlier build of the game, and the one that people would be accessing now was a lot better. And I mean, it runs, like, I'm having fun with it, but I get that I am absolutely the problem, because I'm that casual Battlefield fan, or that casual first-person shooter fan who will take a big old crazy sandbox of stuff. And I also wonder, it's just kind of interesting, because the last time Halo came around, Halo, up against Call of Duty and everything, there was always that back and forward of one of the franchises molding itself around the other. Halo was this massive behemoth across the 2000s, and now with the next Halo coming out, I wonder if someone over at EA or DICE is like, well, Halo's big selling point is a big old menagerie of chaos. We should do one of them. And they've kind of steered in that direction and gone, okay, let's do some Overwatch hero shooter stuff as well. Let's bring all of it in. And then in the process, like you said, you mentioned the Battlefield 5 stuff, they've kind of lost that little tactile edge that goes alongside a large-scale warfare thing, which something like Hell Let Loose is now doing better than anyone else.
It kind of doesn't feel like there's even a market leader at this point. Call of Duty's copying a bunch of other stuff. Battlefield's now copying a bunch of stuff. Halo, for all intents and purposes, seems to be in a good place, but is also copying a bunch of stuff. It almost seems like all of these big shooters are hedging their bets in a lot of ways. And yeah, I'm sure, there are people over at EA and DICE looking at Warzone, looking at Call of Duty, looking at Halo, going, this is good, this is getting a lot of attention, you know, how can we do something similar? I guess that's maybe like a final point for this thing, is that this game, 2042, it feels reactive. It feels like it hasn't been in the oven for 3 years with a concrete vision that everyone's been working towards. It feels like a lot of stuff has been changing along the way, and now we've got this beginning, and it's kind of like very much a beginning, and it's a beginning, again, I'm having fun with, but it's not the full package that I think a lot of people were hoping it would be. And that's not even to mention, sorry, I need to mention, that's not even to mention like the actual glitches that affect like the gameplay, like the hitboxes can be insane and you can be hitting someone, it just doesn't register, and the recoil for some assault rifles just kind of sucks, and there's those elements to it as well, beyond like the actual design philosophies that will split people in a more subjective way.
Right. Can people climb ladders now? Or do they
People
still
can climb ladders.
do the Game & Watch? Yeah. Can they do it? Because that was a big thing.
As far as I'm aware, the hovercrafts, which absolutely wreck you every time, can still scale skyscrapers. I don't know why that's happening, but maybe that'll get fixed soon.
Just Batman's hovercraft. He gets around, he makes it work. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below if you've been able to get hands-on with Battlefield 2042. If you're a long-time fan, what do you think of the trajectory of the IP over the years? And what do you think about where we're at right now with Call of Duty versus Battlefield versus Halo? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Play Halo.